Just hit record. They were going to build, I know this all sounds weird, and then I'll move on, a stealth steeple. They were going to put a wireless tower in the church's steeple behind our house. And it was really weird and subversive, and they didn't talk to any of the neighbors. And people showed up to like a hearing in Loveland, and they were super mad. I was like, when I'm the least upset person in a room full of people talking about like a neighborhood thing, that says something. Anyway, they still didn't show up at any of the meetings. So one Sunday, because they wouldn't return, the church wouldn't return our phone calls and our, things like that, emails. My two boys made signs that had like the church and then little sad animals and like a cell phone tower thing killing the animals. Anyway, about 5 minutes after that church service ended that day, we got a call from the pastor, who was a fantastic human being, didn't check his email ever, was told by the company this wouldn't be a problem with neighbors, and they actually decided not to do the stealth steeple. And it was just a bit of old-fashioned peer pressure and a couple cute kids working on the front lines. So just so that you know, peer pressure works. So I might peer pressure you into showing your face, but only in good fun. Okay, so no worries if your laptop or whatever isn't working for some reason. All right, so we have a test coming up. I believe it opens on Friday. It's over chapters 1 through 3. I put a little bit of a study guide out. I'm going to talk with the GTAs. I need to get them previous tests, and they're going to write new test questions, and we'll like make a new test together. That's what we do. And then after I see it, I should have a copy of that by Thursday. So I think Thursday during class, I'll look down the list and make sure, see if there's any things that didn't make it to the study guide. And again, my job is not to trick you. It's to help facilitate your success in this class. So are there any questions before I move on? Still drinking coffee and ice water. Actually, that's right. I'm going to flaunt it today. I hit 189. So in December, I think the beginning of December, I was 215 and just not feeling optimal me. So I just started like old school Rocky workout, Eye of the Tiger. No, I don't even have a barbell to lift. I just like run up and down our gravel road, do crunches, eat less. But today I've dropped like at least 25 pounds because I just hit 189. I was 215. So yeah. Get lean and mean for bikini and thong season, but we won't talk about that today. All right. Working on a really nice little two-piece from Patagonia because they've got quality bikinis. All right. Let me see here. Distracted myself. Excellent. Let's pop back up here and I'll do a screen share in just a second. And we'll pick up where we left off last time. And then at the end of class, maybe you have any questions, about the exam or anything else I can answer that. Congratulations. Well, thank you, Trevor. Seriously, like I just run this hill up in front of my house, so mostly like I get stared at every day by about 4 horses, the neighbors' horses. Not those 4 horses, not the 4 horses of the apocalypse, just my 4 neighbor horses. They watch me run up and down the hill. Running is horrible, by the way. I hate running. I'm only doing it because I have to. I'll be honest. Now, if we were playing basketball, it's a different story. All right. So before I gave a hug to this guy here, and we proved that this guy is not who somebody thought he was. And so now we're here. All right. Implications. So I did mention this early in the chapter, that the concept of waste is a human construct. So know that, right? Good test question, There's no waste in the natural world. We have to understand that. I mean, everything is emitted, secreted, or discarded, whatever that might be. It ends up as food for something else, right? It ends up breaking down. And waste is simply, and this is a good short definition, I think important to look at or know for the exam, waste is just what humans have no use for, right? So it's interesting because there are all sorts of ways to look at waste. And generationally, we have to understand that that's really different, right? Like your great-grandparents or my great-grandparents, the people that lived through the Great Depression, I mean, my grandparents or great-grandparents saved everything, every jar, you kind of like the garbage warrior guy, every key, every whatever they thought they might have use for. And a lot of times, eventually they did. And so, generations past, we're not in that situation, but now maybe we're around to that again. So who knows? Maybe it's a collector's item, right? I've got this little Star Wars bookend down there, but you never know, right? My mom was one of the few moms that was like, keep those toys. I think they'll be worth something. Everybody else on my block sold all their Star Wars toys at like garage sales so that they could buy like a BMX bike. With get $50 for like a collection that would be worth 50,000 nowadays. So how we frame, and because waste is a human thing, how we frame it, how we define it, like how we assign value to things can determine how they manifest in reality. So, garbage warrior guy is taking what people think is trash and everywhere in the world, right? What do you have? You've got plastic and you've got tires, right? And he's using that. So rather than like have a endless tire fire like they do in some places, like what about saving those? Because they're the next thing that instead of getting thrown in a landfill is like how we build houses in the future. Whatever. We know that we are using materials and reusing them more than ever. So same thing with pollution, a great base definition, but worthy, right? Matter that is out of place, or waste that is out of place, right? I have sewage treatment plants out of place, pollution, but oftentimes the sewage treatment plants, when we look at environmental justice, these industrial, like the communities that have the biggest impact from industrial damage to the environment are oftentimes, communities of color and impoverished communities and rural communities. So out of place just means not in my backyard. And sometimes, right, not even in this country. Gosh, collector's items. What about Beanie Babies? I used to deal Beanie Babies in the black market in Minneapolis. I can't even talk about that. It's like 20 years ago. I did. I worked at a game store, and the guy who owned the store would let me buy one of the bears for $5, like the Princess Diana bear, and then let me sell it. Then I would sell it for like $500, and that's how I made my rent when I was there. Anyway, oh, the dam in India that broke because of the glacier. Yep. And we don't have time to talk about that right now, but yeah, a really important climate change related piece over just the last few days. Very tragic. Anyway, I know a guy in college that started a Beanie Baby kiosk in the mall, and he made like a couple $1 million in a couple years, and then he just retired. I know. And now they're not worth much of anything. But yeah, Beanie Babies out there. Waste. All right, so sometimes life cycle analysis piss me off, right? I don't want to know how much, like, you don't want to know maybe how much like water or total energy goes into like making a cup of coffee. I just want my fix. I just need my cup of coffee. But if we do life cycle analyses, then we can find out ways to more responsibly do that. What does fair trade mean? And there's a lot of people in the social department that have done papers and their thesis on exactly that. Is fair trade real? Does it help people in other countries? Does it establish like a global way to do trade that's more fair? And in a very, very, very oversimplified way, yes to all of those things. So life cycle analysis, what is that? Environmental impacts, looking at that throughout, right, the life cycle of any given piece of whatever, whether it's a ceramic mug, and that's what the book talks about: reductions, efficiencies, etc. There was a whole semester about 3 years ago that I carried the same paper cup to class every class period, and I put a little notch in it every day that I used it that semester because the book talks about this. And the example is like a disposable paper cup versus a ceramic usable mug, but that could be versus, right, all these stainless steel options that we have now. And as we looked at it, as the text looked at it, Dr. Carolyn, he's saying that the mug is 25 times more energy to make, right? And then if we look at the life cycle of that, you're talking about washing it and the hot water and the detergent that goes into that and the energy that's being used. So I wonder if over the paper cup, the mug is 25.5 times, then this Yeti, right? And if you leave one of these on campus for exactly 3 minutes and 31 seconds, someone will make it their own, right? You know that to be true. That happened to me just last semester. But this is stainless steel and magnets. And so this has got to be like 75 times a ceramic cup, I would imagine. But what's the point, Jason? Well, the point is use, right? The ultimate point is, if we look at the total embodied energy or the energy life cycle analysis, the LCA of something, look, whatever it is, you better use it. I know me, and I know that that ceramic mug is like one rushed doing the dishes away from being broken and not getting to use it very long. So you got to know yourself and what you can get use out of. And then this also looks at, in regards to waste, how much use can we really get out of something like used clothes and a used car, and things that are really, really, really energy intensive to make. There's a lot of value in being able to do that. I think I mentioned in this class when I went to college, and my dad, who had never gone to a thrift store in his life, suddenly like found out how amazing it was to buy a pair of pants for 50 cents or $1, and would call me up in college and be like, oh, and yeah, I've been doing that for a long time, right? So we've got to use it. How many cups can we get? How well are they made? And then the book didn't even talk about it, but that's why I brought that paper cup to class for like months, because I was like, well, what about reusing the paper cup? That's got to be pretty non-energy intensive. And it did. It lasted an entire semester. And a couple semesters ago, like I said, I left my Yeti on top of a car next to me. I left campus, came back in 3 minutes, and about 3.5 minutes, and it was gone. That was a waste for me. Hopefully somebody else is using it, because at least it couldn't break. But we've got to choose for ourselves what to value, right? I mean, how do we do landfills, air pollution, water usage, energy waste, or energy consumption? What's that look like on the other side when we talk about waste? I'm not going to talk too much about this. This is the example. I guess even a foam cup is on here, but life cycle analysis, use. So, what do we value, or what ought to be most valued, as we're sort of considering this piece here? Impact on our soil, impact on our air, impact on water, impact on energy. We could talk about workers' rights, social justice. I mean, maybe cheap prices, right? If we put this on a list of things that we value, this culture certainly values cheap prices, recycling, or maybe reusing. So, and all of these are, of course, related to the concept that we're talking about here today of waste. So how do we create less waste? How do we make sure that that doesn't have, how do we make sure that that doesn't ruin our water? As we're going to talk about and look at Tuesday or Thursday, in regards to like the e-waste piece that I'm talking about, and how communities do that and what that really happens. I mean, these communities that are doing that in different places in Japan and China, I mean, within a year or two of the starting to do the e-waste piece, their water's, 100 times that, filled with arsenic and lead and whatever than the EPA would recommend, or that's safe. So, you take away a local food supply, you take away the ability to have a local water supply. So how do we figure out our resources, look at our resources, and then also sort of rank our resources? Because remember, garbage cow don't care. Doesn't. I don't know. All right. So I don't really think it's a battle, but where is it, right? Like where are we with calculating the real impact of recycling? Is it better? Is it not? How about if the landfill or recycling are head to head? And of course, this is kind of the thing with drug laws, right? They're inconsistent, like what is not at all illegal in Colorado is very much illegal in Nebraska, and 10 times as much in Las Vegas, even though things that can be considered much more dangerous or deviant are not in the same place. So there's no real consistency, just like that with the drug war. The same is true with recycling. What an individual's community's capacities are, or dedications are, or whatever that might be, to composting, to recycling, versus just landfilling everything. And I have to believe, and maybe I should figure this out. Freeport, Illinois is my hometown. It's where my dad is. He's going to move out here next year. They do recycle in that town, but I'm imagining, with no bike lanes, even 26,000 people, bit of a rural Illinois location, that a lot of that is landfill. So based on all models, though, if we look at it across the board, recycling, it is good for the environment, right? The life cycle analysis, the energy of recycling is less, right, than the energy to send it to landfills. And across the board, if we look at a lot of different entryways, recycled goods come out on top. when we're looking in opposition to extraction of raw materials, you know? And of course, you know, the 3 R's, we talk about that, but there are all sorts of concerns. And that does not mean that recycling is always a positive thing. A lot of times they're just not recycling it. It's all going into the landfill. There's not real stringent people or people making sure that is the case. But the social justice concerns, particularly with e-waste sorting, communities near these areas, a lot of times if we look, they've got, you know, prisoners doing this work. Well, what's that mean, Jason? Well, 10 cents an hour. It's a lot like chattel slavery. You know, there are social justice issues around recycling, and we have to acknowledge that. But if we're strictly looking at materials and impact on the environment, the energy that is used versus sending it to landfill to recycling, it wins, right? Recycling wins versus landfilling. But I'm saying, let's go a step past that, right? What about non-usage in the first place? You know, what about just not cutting out some of these pieces that maybe you don't need or that aren't necessary, whatever that is as far as the extraction of raw materials. So obviously there are choices that are even better, but when looking at the two, clearly. All right, considering your eating habits, both at home and eating out, how much food do you think you waste or throw away without using it? Food, don't waste it. There's so many really awesome anti-food waste propaganda posters from World War II. Food is a weapon. Clean your plate. I mean, none of us. So if we're in the clean plate club, that's nowhere near as hardcore as, you know, you don't want to be a Nazi, you better clean your plate, do your part. That's a little more intense, right? Okay. So let's look at the answers to that real quickly, as I can pull up the top hat here. So considering your eating habits, 54 people said some, none for, half for, a lot, 3. So, you know, most only 1 person. So there's not a lot of food being wasted. So I followed up with the second question, which is, do you think you waste more food eating out or at home? So what did everybody say here? Let's look. We had 69 answers, and home waste more would be 46, interesting, and out to eat wasting more, 23. So where are you wasting more and why, right? You know, I mean, we're gonna ask these questions, but all semester long, the most important thing is why. What do you think?
I think for me, it's like I buy stuff and then it goes bad before I get a chance to eat it. And so that's where I find myself like mostly throwing out things in terms of food waste. But if like at a restaurant, I'm more likely to eat it just because I'm there and I paid for it. And it doesn't, you know, it's not sitting in the back of my fridge hiding out.
I'd like a little raise of a hand for anybody that cost matters. Like, I went out to eat and I'm spending this money. I am going to eat this whole meal. Yeah, definitely. I agree with that. Good. Working in a restaurant, I know how much food waste there is. Something not perfect, we have to just throw it away. Yeah, lot of food waste and large portions in restaurants as well. So there's, I guess, a different take on that. So much food waste at restaurants is stupid. So much. There's a lot of people chiming in. All right, so which did you say you wasted more and why?
I said restaurants just because the portions are so big. But recently I started taking a tiffin with me and I like pack my own food when I leave. But you know, it also depends on what you got. Like some things are fine to eat as leftovers, some things get gross.
Yeah, absolutely. That's why really I just eat Thai food when I go out. I'm just limiting it to one kind of food in one restaurant nowadays because I know I will eat it all the time. Oh, doggo. Oh, you can see Huckle. All right, so who else? Waste more and why?
I said that I waste more at restaurants since at home and here I try to compost everything I can and just like use it all instead of just throwing it away. But then at restaurants, I try to take stuff home, but like Haley said, the portions are just huge. So you can't always eat everything and you don't know what they're doing after they take it back into the kitchen. They're likely just throwing it away. So you have a lot less control over where the food goes at a restaurant, I think.
Yeah, and I think it took me a long time to bring my reusable bags to the store, like too long of a time for me to be able to do that, even though I wanted to. It's taken me a long time to actually bring something to a restaurant, like my own container, so that it doesn't have to go back or whatever that might be. And of course, that's probably changed. I've got a lot more people saying they waste at home, though. Why? Like, I want to hear from some of those folks.
I originally said that even though I've worked in restaurants for years, I should have put more thought into my answer, but I think it's because I said that personally because I see it firsthand. Whereas when you're taking waste home from a restaurant, you don't really think about all the waste that goes into it. So like just from, it's kind of like an illusion. Like you feel like you maybe waste more at home, but in the grand scheme of things, I probably don't.
Right.
But I also never eat out anymore. So
I think that's probably a lot less across the board. And tragically, as we lose, fantastic restaurants that are not chain restaurants getting replaced by, likely to get replaced by more crapped food, I guess. Sorry, go ahead. Aspen, do you have your hand up, or is it? Might be frozen hand. Anybody else more at home? Go ahead. Yeah.
I'd like to add on to what she just said. I think like because at a restaurant you don't see, like, yeah, she said you don't see the waste, but like all you see is like plates and silverware and whatever, and those are going to get washed and reused. What you don't see is like all those scraps, the trimmings, the whatever, like the grease traps, and then whereas at home you might see that packaging for the meat. At the same time, restaurants also like are likely to work in bulk a lot of the time, so there might be less waste. But then opposed to say a package that would feed a family of 4, if you rule of cubic or the cubic rule or whatever it's called.
Right. Wow. Yeah, absolutely. I wonder, because there's so much more food served at a restaurant, even if they order in bulk, I would imagine the waste is more because there's more people in their home taking that whatever meat wrapping or if there's a recycled part of that. But that would be interesting. I would probably be stunned at just the amount of waste from one restaurant. And so many people that are my students in the past have worked as a server or are currently a server, whatever that might be. And they've reported so much waste or the company's not doing anything to recycle. So that's something else to consider. That's interesting. Good. Anybody else?
I'll chime in on that one real quick. I'm a dishwasher at a brand new taco restaurant called the Taco Stop. I'll give it a shameless plug. It's really good. Go check it out. But yeah, they're just a new startup. They opened like 6 months ago, right before COVID, kind of, and they're not really focused on reducing their waste. They're trying to just survive right now. They're doing a great job at the moment, but reducing their food waste isn't a huge priority right now. A lot of people, they order a ton of food. Their eyes are way bigger than their appetite, and they leave a ton on their plate, and we're just throwing all of it away. But I see how so many people waste a lot at home too, buying in bulk. Like me and my roommates shop at Costco, and we're still never going to go through all this stuff. Yeah, we just have a ton of food waste at our house as well. So I see food waste on both ends a lot.
Yeah, that's look. Yeah, wow. So many things that I've like not considered before. That's why I love like learning new things or talking to new people, because right now restaurants, even if you had something in place that was going to be this awesome recycling thing or a composting piece, it probably absolutely takes a back seat to surviving right now as a restaurant, period. So many ways that we've talked to students, right? So many people have said because they're taking things to go now all the time. But If you live with 4 roommates, the likelihood of something going bad lessens. Yeah, the likelihood of someone eating my food also gets more. All right. I've worked in restaurants, and I feel like if there's a work refrigerator, I feel like there's somebody at every place of work who is okay eating somebody else's food. Like they might try and hide that, but there's at least one person that would be like, "Oh, that looks good to me." I've experienced that. Julie has experienced that. Anyway, worked in restaurants, farms, pick up scraps, and provide receptacles. Restaurants still doesn't want to bother. Yeah, right. And that's the other thing. In Europe, food waste, you're doing a food waste project. We should talk about food waste all semester long. I mean, there are a lot of programs in Europe and in other places where that food waste from restaurant goes straight to a truck and straight to silage or for pigs or for, whatever that might be. And so very, very, very little waste in comparison. But even, yeah, when people offer to have those programs, and sometimes that might be just feeding human beings, and we're seeing those, dumpsters getting locked more frequently. And we have to understand that there was an executive order during the Clinton administration barring restaurants and or grocery stores, places like that throw away stuff from being held accountable. So it's their own concern about legality issues and corporate issues, but there's already precedent set in government 20 some years ago that you are not held responsible. And still the trend, the value is to lock people out or keep even people from getting that food. So if we can't get that food to people, you would think that it would be very easy to get that to livestock. Not always the case as well. But it is a good idea. In a lot of places they do it. I go to grocery shopping once a week, so I only buy food for the week. Things rarely go bad. Yeah, all sorts of pragmatic solutions for sure. Pigs and goats eat everything. Chickens, add chickens to that list. I'd have never had a pig, but when we had goats, now we just give our neighbor, if you're ever looking for a way to get rid of a Christmas tree, if you have a live Christmas tree or Christmas tree you're trying to get rid of, goats will strip a Christmas tree in I don't know, like in an hour. They love Christmas trees. So, and I actually just talked to somebody today about buying a piglet or two. The idea would be for meat for our farm, but they're smarter than dogs. So my guess is they just turn out to be a pet on our farm here. Do we dare even open the grocery store waste can of worms? Well, let me get back to the lecture here. But yeah, I mean, it's considerable. Now, like we did mention before, there are some grocery stores, most grocery stores in town have some mechanism worked out with the Larimer County Food Bank or a local food bank, though not all of them. So yeah, all right. All right. Screen share. Sorry about that. Share. Here we go. All right. And talked about that. Food waste, the great illusion. We are going to talk a bit about oh, sorry. That's just awful. That's the stuff of nightmares right there. I forgot about that in my slide. Oh my goodness. Up to 50% of all food in the United States is wasted. Somewhere around 50 is where we're at. So think about that, right? Just the United States and the UK could pull over 1.5 billion people out of hunger. And again, statistically significant, excuse me, if I ask you, how much has US food capital waste increased since 1974? The answer is 50%. So again, we've lumped that on top. And I was born in 73. So in my lifetime, there's doubled the food waste again or whatever. So in some cultures, it might be a cultural piece to gain face if you've got a special event. A lot of times, and I made a mistake years ago of trying to draw a straight carrot that didn't look like a carrot versus a curvy carrot on the board. I'll never do that again. I'll just say that food and how should it look is something that wastes a lot of food. I mean, if you knew how many carrots were thrown away or how many apples were thrown away, just how much food, meat, right? And we've already heard from a student in here that's in meat sciences that's not the way to tell is color, but yet, right? So much thrown away because of the look of it. And of course, the straight carrot piece is that uniformity in food law, those straight carrot. So market concentration, this is important to think about here. I know that we like to hate on Monsanto. I do. I don't know about you, but I'm all about it. I really, really think that That company is awful. That being said, if we're going to look at impact, we've got to look at this market that is dominated by a few large firms. I mean, right? There's a lot of sellers, but only a few buyers. And if we look at the GDP of like Sam's Club, which is more than many countries make, I don't know if that's 500 million or billion, 500 million. Anyway, it's such a large number, and it's dominated by a few really large firms that, it's taking some of the choice out of it. It massively encourages food waste. And that's our scenario here. And that's not even food that the government hoards, that eventually grain and things like that goes bad. So we've got to look at what role do big seller or big buyers like that really play in food waste. And it's a considerable, here's a few: the Growing Project, Colorado State composting efforts. Here's just a few articles, few links. That is not a fountain of oil. They did not strike it rich. That's sewage. Vindicated Market and Esch's Market are good local alternatives for buying cheap or ugly or slightly out of use by date food. Yeah, absolutely. Cool. Oh, I didn't know about that other place either. I want to look into that. Thank you for writing that. So all societies have to put our waste somewhere, right? I mean, hopefully that's in a tube and far away from where you're at. Not necessarily though, right? That could be right in your front yard, depending if a pipe breaks or if something like that happens. Colorado flooding changed that, right? With sewage and waste. And it's interesting because things can change quickly, right? Regarding that. So if we look at collective coverage, that's a proportion of an area served by municipal waste stream. What's that look like? But it is a privilege that a lot of people do not have. So we haven't touched much on it. And I know I've been making fun of Garbage Cow as an image that reminds us, though, that infrastructure that we have helps stop the spread of infectious disease, right? It keeps us alive. It keeps us safe and healthy. And that is not infrastructure that everybody has by any stretch of the imagination, right? All right. So potential biohazard, of course, as well. I'm thinking about it out here in the country because they've got new rules recently. I think it's about to cost me a lot of money. But they've got new rules over the past several years for septic systems. And so a septic system would be like a large underground container that the waste goes into, the liquid flows out of, and it's pretty much, that's how they do things a lot out here in the country. And so I think we have an old system. We're looking at building my dad a place. So we will see what that looks like, but it has to be safe because you're basically filtering out waste on your property around where you live. And gray water systems and the stuff that they're doing with septic in Garbage Warrior, that's that as well. So there are ways to do it safely, but I think that there are new rules that are more stringent, which I approve of, even though I think it's, going to be expensive to do for sure. E-waste, we will come back to on Thursday, but massive human rights violation, massive social justice, massive environmental racism. And again, it's this bit of a piece of privilege that it's not in our backyards. We don't really have an e-waste scenario that looks like the ones that we will look at in this country. All right. Have you ever thrown away a computer? So we're going to look at that later. All right. But let's at least touch base with this. So again, electronics and like, right, technology, that is a biggie. So discarded computers, cell phones, printers. I have pagers up there. Yes, I do. Digital photo, music devices, refrigerators, TVs, but so much waste, and all those go into e-waste. But a lot of times it's a packaged radio that is already in the packaging that doesn't get sent and never even makes it to shelves before it is pumped right back into these communities. And it never even gets a chance to be wasted, which is probably the ultimate type of waste, right? And then stripped right away again. So In Ghana, 215,000 tons of electric waste. 30 was percent of all of that particular 215,000 pounds was brand new, but obsolete already. So 30% of just that in one country. So we're looking at e-waste increasing by 500% from 2007 in India, 400 and 200%. Again, I'm not giving you 5%, 10%. 5 and 10% can be statistically significant. 200%, I'm going to go out on a limb and say, we got to do something about it. E-waste from cell phones, you've got a rise in India of 1,800%. So many of those devices never even making it again to market, being stripped for the raw materials and then sent back again. Hopefully most of that, 90%, 95% of all those phones and all those printers, cartridges and things like that, still wasted. They're harvesting a tiny bit of toner, a tiny bit of gold from the circuit boards, but the methods that they're doing it are destroying their communities. And I mean, destroying the communities. We'll look at that next time in relation to specific piece. So we also export hazard though, right? Like we're not just exporting hazardous waste, we're good at exporting hazard as a job to other places, right? Making these communities less just, following historical patterns of oppression and creating situations where people, their immediate surrounding communities are toxic, toxic zones. And I'm not exaggerating that. We will look at that again. But again, I guess one of the things I need to stress is that this doesn't happen in a vacuum, folks. And the book doesn't say this, but I'm adding this, that follows where the e-waste goes, where our exported of hazardous jobs goes. It follows historical patterns of oppression, right? Colonization. And so, now we're bringing in a bigger history piece in regards to, and another connector in regards to the environment. All right. Let me look here. Would you support laws that make you compass? Okay, so I'm gonna take a back seat and we are going to shift gears. All right. Vindicated. What is that? Is that a grocery store? Vindicate's Market? Is that in Fort Collins here, or is that a chain?
Yeah, so basically Vindicate is in Fort Collins, and it's all the food that they get from like Whole Foods and Sprouts and stuff that is just going to be wasted because it's like about ready to expire or something. And it's all donation based, so if you like can't pay, you can basically get free food. But like I donate $5 or $10 every time, and I get enough food for basically like a week or two at a time. And it's fine because it's like stuff that doesn't actually like expire, and like bruised fruit and stuff and vegetables, and it's amazing. So I highly recommend.
Yeah, fantastic. I definitely have been to Esch's, and I was to Esch's when they first started it years and years ago in Loveland. They built a really nice location between Fort Collins and Loveland. That's like a brand new building, and another type of way to look at that. I'm just hoping that, wow, it seems like, there's a couple more here than I even knew about. So that's fantastic. Again, that's one of my goals is being able to feed people, being able to help people that are food insecure, or having been there lots in my life myself. What are some resources for people, students, people that don't have resources to grow their own food, people that, I don't know, can't make it to other locations. Interesting, good stuff. All right, so I want to switch gears here, and I would like to talk about, I'll finish the lecture on Thursday, just a few slides and a few questions I want to wrap up, but not today. So I'd like to talk about Garbage Warrior, Michael Reynolds, and how amazing of a scenario that is. So I believe, did that already wrap up, or is it about to wrap up? Let me see here. Okay, so yeah, it's due, the final post on that. It closes Thursday. So you're going to want to make some posts. If you haven't made a post, you need to make at least 3 posts on at least 3 different days. You can't post multiple times for credit on the last day, although you could reply to 10 different people if you were, on an interesting thread or something like that. So here's how I do a little bit of the discussion. I know the discussion on board, but I think it's much more valuable for us to talk about it in person. So reactions to Garbage Warrior. What do you think? Oh yeah, now we've got more people. I'm looking at the second page unmuted. Thanks everybody for showing yourselves. Some of you I've never even seen before, so hey, welcome. Impressions of Garbage Warrior. What did you think? What stands out in your mind? What questions do you have? I think it's a great documentary. Michael Reynolds is still doing his work. And there's something that we're going to intersect this semester, and it's freaky people and geniuses. Okay, when we look at issues of the environment, there are so many weirdos that are doing awesome things, and they are scientist weirdos, and they are backed, and they are architect weirdos, and they are just weirdos, but they are thinking in different ways and creating some of the most awesome and impressive like changes that I've ever sort of seen. So there is a theme that runs through some of these really genius folks, and you probably know that too. What do you think? What stands out about Garbage Warrior to you? And I'll be quiet here and have some water or some coffee.
I think it was wild how, like, after he went to the island, I don't remember what
I think it was the Andaman Islands.
Yeah.
Where they had the big tsunami.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
After that, the like architect community and like the United States was like, yeah, this is our dude. He's a genius. After like taking away his license and stuff before.
Yeah. We are slow oftentimes to recognize those brilliant people, right? Like he had to go to another country, maybe even Mexico, then after that, and build the sustainable house. I mean, and on those islands, right? I think 3/4 of the population was killed or missing, just gone here 1 second and gone. So yeah, his obviously, and what did they have in that community? What was the government's like? What did they do there? Does anybody remember? Like he built his place, but does anybody remember what the government did to like help them out or build something?
If I remember correctly, it was like those, yeah, someone just said it in the comments. It was like a tin shack with like a whole family living in like super close quarters.
Yeah, like I remember his quote was like, I don't know who they built this for, but it wasn't humans. It wasn't with human beings in mind. I mean, what, that's got to over 100 degrees during the day. No air movement, doesn't keep you cool, doesn't collect rainwater, right? Which is a big deal there. You get, I don't remember how many inches of rainwater you're like tons and lots and lots and lots and lots. That's my non-scientific. I can't remember, but whatever that might be, it's a lot because it's an island. And all of their wells, almost all of their wells filled with salt water and or dead bodies. And so now he also gives them a way to collect rainwater so that they never have to worry about that. Yeah, good. Okay, and then the United States, I guess to Noah's point, is finally like, oh, yes, you're a genius. That's right. Come on back. Build houses here. Do your thing. We love you. We've always loved you, right? Right? But whatever. I think, of course, I'm being snarky, but the reality of it is that, you know, they did embrace him and he is doing some test communities. And it has been a ridiculously long time since we have had substantive changes in architecture, the likes of which he's talking about. Okay, other things that stand out about Michael Reynolds, the process, anything like that, because I think there's so many good things in this movie.
Hi, sorry, my birds are screaming. But one thing that stood out to me in particular with this documentary was when he tried to pass that bill and they kept filibustering over and over and over again. And I feel like that happens a lot when it comes towards environmentally friendly policies.
Yeah, and we had mentioned that maybe before. They said, don't, like, they're basically like, don't even show up here, dude. It's like, don't show up, not with your long hair, not unless you got a suit. Don't even mention the word global warming. Don't mention climate change. Like, just a huge list of do not do's, even though the whole reason he's addressing this in large part is because of climate change. It's certainly about architectural innovation, but wow, right? Yeah, definitely. And then filibustering, not doing their jobs. Imagine that. Today, for the first time ever, I during the impeachment, they had the timeline. They had the video of the insurrection, and I gotta say, it's like 20 to 30 times worse than what I ever thought. And so, yeah, a lot of obstruction when it comes to the environment, and certainly the bill got shut down multiple times. And I do believe they finally passed it, right? Yes, good. Other comments about the documentary? So many good things in it.
I thought one of the things that was interesting about the documentary was just like how nice the houses that they built actually were. Like you would think that someone building a house out of tires and garbage wouldn't look very good and it'd just be something for them to live in. But some of those houses looked like if you rented out an Airbnb there, like honestly the inside could look like that. And so that was super surprising to me.
Yeah, and he did admit, right, early on, Ryan, he said, I mean, these were kind of ugly, right? They're kind of thrown together. I mean, we put a windmill on one and it almost ripped off the building because we were experimenting, right? How do we use passive solar? How do we do this? But I think you bring up a really cool piece, which is they're awesome. They're mind expandingly beautiful. And I've stayed in one. You can go down to that community and you can rent a place for a night or for a weekend. And I'm not sure about COVID. You could also go down there and volunteer to build an earthship with them, with this community of people, like an internship. And I'm sure that they are still doing that. I'm sure that they are being smart about it as well. Yeah. Somebody said the romanticization of the woman lobbyist, though. Yeah, it's a little weird. Definitely. Notice that too. Uncomfortable can make 400 houses with all the beer cans I use. I mean, that's what he said. What do we have around us? We got tires and old tires, and we got beer cans. Yeah, good. Some of the way that they get light to move through those places, though, and of course they're all built in these, tremendously beautiful areas as well. Actually, the person that runs Marquee Magazine. So for those people that love concerts and part of your life was going to a bunch of shows, that magazine that was started down in Boulder, he and his partner, they bought a place in Taos from Michael Reynolds with 2 indoor greenhouses. And I'll try and get her to send me pictures of their place that I could share with the class if you'd be interested. Yes, you can go to earthship.com and look on the insides of those places, but their place is stunningly amazing and completely self-sufficient. It's awesome. Other things that stand out that you liked, that you didn't like, what do you think?
I'll speak up again, unless anyone else wants to go. I feel like I talk a lot. I really appreciate Reynolds and all that he's done, and especially the legislative work and how that was presented. But I also found it very odd that he was presented as being the pioneer of this type of architecture. I grew up in central Mexico, and people use that stuff all the time, seeing glass bottles and tires used, and all of that stuff is not new at all. And I've seen people use giant satellite dishes that they can't use anymore as roofs for homes. And people will instead of buying barbed wire or prison wire to put at the top of their house, they'll put broken bottles in the cement and then smash. But it's just not a new concept to me. So that aspect was a little bit rubbed me the wrong way a little bit, just that he was framed kind of in this white savior lens just a little bit, but I did really appreciate the focus on the legislative and the bureaucratic hoops and stuff. So I think it was super valuable for that reason.
Yeah, and maybe they just needed to spend more time talking about indigenous folks, right?
Yeah.
I mean, because it's I teach this class, right? Environmental sociology, and we're going to look at electric trains, and we're going to look at adobe houses. This shit is old. None of this is our culture, even our young culture, has been was doing all these things. We were doing all of this before. So it's like, really, I feel like this is like, it's not a rerun, but it's just like all of a sudden it's new to people. And that's fine. That's fine, really, as long as I think you do pick up on a good point there, which is why not showcase a little bit of indigenous housing? You know, how did people living in the desert stay cool? That's a big deal. Not by building a tin shack, you know.
Especially
like,
in Taos, because New
Right.
Mexico is like such a it's such a big place with native territories. So it was just weird. That was weird for me. That I don't know.
Yeah, you know, and it's the filmmakers catching on to this and being like, holy cow, you know, or whatever. That's inspiring. I met this guy and I'm going to do it that way. But yeah, I do think that we are talking about kind of ancient ways to build, right? And collecting rainwater. I mean, things it's just not all that revolutionary. I hate to say it, backyard chickens. I'm not doing anything. Even when I was doing it when it was illegal, I did think there was something revolutionary about it because most people did have chickens 50, 60 years ago, 70 years ago, like almost everybody. And then they didn't, but it's not new. You know, it's like just that people refiguring it out thing. Like the woman that helped lobby for the bill said that people are reluctant to acknowledge a potential solution because they don't want to give power to the problem in the first place. Yes, I mean, rewind to day one of this class, which is we all know what's going on. Why then can't we get things jump started, you know, to act on this? And that is, yeah, I think that a lot of these people feel like acknowledging it. I don't know. Like, that doesn't make any sense to me. I'm just gonna be honest. Like acknowledging something, giving power to it. Well, if Darth Vader is standing in front of you with a lightsaber, you'd better acknowledge that, or he's gonna cut you in half. Like the acknowledging it part is like kind of gonna save your ass. Star Wars metaphor. All right, what else stands out in this movie? I think it's.
I wanted to jump off what was said last. Kind of makes you question why we don't implement these like environmental techniques in cities, and it's obviously comes down to what Reynolds ran into, which is a bunch of yellow tape, like politically, and it's unfortunate, but like other ways we can like implement solutions, we need to find ways like incentivize to use our waste more. Like a lot of these recycling plants can't even recycle most plastics, so like finding ways to, I don't know, incentivize and put more value on our waste, I think is a way to kind of implement one of his solutions that doesn't really have yellow tape.
Yeah, and that's a sociological piece. That's that behavior piece. That's how whether we see things as trash or whether we see it as a revolutionary way for us to get a home without paying $500,000 and not even build the house with passive solar, whatever our options are now. Yeah, excellent thought. Who else? What else stands out in your head? How about this? A little raise your hand if you noticed his impressive way of doing pull-ups and push-ups. It's only because I've seen this video so many times that I'm like, wow, I thought my workout regimen was unique, but not so. He's got a very interesting. What did his partner say? What did she say? What did his wife say about this guy? Michael Reynolds is a what? Anybody remember the term that she used? Because I just said this right to introduce our discussion on this. Two-word phrase that she used. Weirdo, close. I think she said freak magnet. She's Michael's a freak magnet. He just attracts these people, right? And these people, they go on, right, to say like, oh, I thought this was going to be some hippy dippy shit, but actually these people work harder than anybody I've ever known, right? So like there's the impression of these communities, these sustainable or communes or whatever that might be. And then there's like the actual work that you have to put into it, which everybody said was, I mean, bigly. We'll just say that the work that you have to put in to be a member of these communities is after the work that you already have to put into and what other job you do all day till you come back home to try and build your living structure to try and help somebody else build theirs too. Good. What else stands out about this piece? There's still some good pieces, I think, in here, things that we haven't talked about. Or what questions do you have about these places?
have a question. Are there, aside from Reynolds that are there other testing sites like that? Because that was one of the ideas that he had that I thought was really cool because, I mean, yeah, how do you expect to change architecture or make change if we can't test it out and make sure it is safe so that it can pass those codes? I think that's a really valuable idea to implement in order, almost even before changing policy, it feels like by using testing sites, it kind of feels like using the same system we have to like warm up into like changing the system, if that makes sense. But are there other places like that?
Well, first of all, I guess what you're speaking to is data collection, right? Like, and they brought it up in the movie. You test cars, you test bombs, you tested nuclear weapons in this country and didn't even know what was going to happen and invited people to watch. I already mentioned that like last week. So why can't we test housing? I mean, that seems like out of all the threatening things that you might test, car crashes and planes and I mean satellites or spaceships that crash. Yeah, like let's gather some data. What's a better way to live and a better way to use energy? I'm not sure. I'm going to say yes. Either under the radar or I mean, how many architects are there that are in a green building like this? This is, somebody had a documentary done on them. There's got to be. I'd be curious to know. And of course, this is not, I would never supersede the conversation with, oh, well, code isn't valuable. Code is valuable. Safety and infrastructure are valuable. We talk about that every single class period. That being said, if you can't get out of the box of code, then we aren't going to find better ways. And likely, just like there's better ways of farming or better ways to do energy or better ways to raise our kids than slapping them like 50 years ago, that there are likely better ways to build houses. And that, again, is not some bold statement. Kind of makes me wonder there's so much denial is happening if it's because denial people don't want to make a change. I don't know, maybe housing is inconvenient. They're charging in town $400,000 or $500,000. 4 years ago, I thought I was losing our window because we had looked for 4 years before that. We got shut down for every house we looked at. We got outbid, shut down, you name it. And we got our farm for like 500,000, which I think is awesome because it's like 4 acres. And people right now, 4 years later in town, are paying $400,000 or $500,000 for a townhouse, which is just a fancy way to say apartment. That being said, once you get into those numbers, it was very obvious to Julie and I that you might want to consider building an earthship. You might want to consider the most appealing thing about this whole documentary is where he's like, I'm free. I'm effing free. I don't have a mortgage. I don't have heating. I don't have, I feel free to get up in the morning and do what I'm supposed to do in this life. Now, I know that's like maybe a little cosmic for some students, but it's also not, because you're going to spend a lot of your time working a job that you don't want to work to pay back $100,000 plus loan while you could be doing, so that's why I hope they forgive student debt, while you could be doing something that you're trained for, something more substantive, something that builds a better Harley motorcycle or a better way to live in a house. Yeah, good. Universities could be considered testing sites. That'd be fantastic. I mean, yes, let's just start with universities for a lot of things. Science and smart people and creative young people. University sounds like a great place to do that. All right. Who else? What else stands out in the documentary to you?
I think a big part of it too is the United States, like the stigma around building houses out of trash, like our image would somehow be like damaged if that's what like other countries saw us as. So like when he went to go build on the island and stuff like that, like that's more what we think of as like, oh, well, they're a developing country, so building houses out of trash will they won't damage their image and stuff like that. So I think the stigma around that is like a really big part of it as well.
Yeah, for sure. Yep. And people are wary about insuring them. People are wary about selling them. Our idea was to buy land, split it with a friend, and build an earthship. That was my plan. Lots of things in between point A and point Z. And some of those are just, as we see in this documentary really well, institutional changes or obstructions, right, that need to be changed. Natural resource building is a great example of implementation of biofactories. Yes, good. I'd like to know more about that. Now I've got something to look up later today. All right. Are the building restrictions in Colorado that prevent earthships from being built? Well, valuation, although you and I don't think that that's maybe a big deal, like, oh, I don't care what it's worth. I just want to build it and live in it. That plays a role in it. How you're doing the septic, really it's code. It's code, and code for building in Fort Collins in Colorado is very dicey. So there are a lot of building restrictions. Yeah, absolutely. And maybe someday, I'm working with the Larimer County Planning right now because we're building a father-in-law place for my dad, or starting the process of applying for it. And that's the easiest thing you can do in Colorado. And it's still like very, very lengthy. But maybe I could get the person who's helping us with planning, maybe send him an email and talk about this, because that to me would be interesting. Good. What else? We'll go just a few more minutes here before I call things for today. But what else about Garbage Warrior stands out?
So something I noticed, I'm not sure if this was brought up or not, but it just kind of impacted me, just how people get comfortable with something and they just refuse to change. They mentioned, I want to say that the housing and like the models for their houses have been around since basically early like industrialization of America, and we just haven't changed it. And it just kind of shows that people are kind of afraid to see and to kind of like do change just because they're comfortable where they are now.
Habit energy or momentum. Yeah. Technological, sociological momentum, habit energy. Absolutely. And really, it makes me wonder how much of it has to do with power companies, because one of the basic changes, and you made me think about this, Kenzie, is that passive solar just requires you to face a house in a certain direction and have a little bit of natural lighting and open, like passive solar is a very easy way to build that can save a tremendous amount of money on heating. So yeah, even when we're talking about making the smallest of architectural changes that do not defy code, right? I mean, just like the placement of a building. We have a farmhouse that was built in the 60s on a piece of land, and they of course face it in just the right direction, where the breeze blows through the house, where they understand the orientation and relationship to the sun. Again, a lot of these are not really technological wild advancements, but habits that we get into. And that can be applied across the board. You start to see something as this, and it's always this. And that can happen in architecture, it can happen in medical, whatever field, politics, you name it. Good. Who else has something to contribute about this? Something that stands out? Well, I think something to consider, although obviously you're renting now, or you're living in a school dorm or whatever that, or you're living with your parents. But if you're living on your own, one of the big things to consider all the way around is cost. What are you making versus how much you have to work for that, just to barely survive, or whatever that might be. I think these are great ways to live. I would love to live in one myself. A lot of my students are like, no. Some of them are like, yes. Would you ever live in an earthship? Or that does not appeal to you in any way? What do you think?
Yeah, I totally would. I was gonna ask, like, is there anything that is there any geographical area that just like can't do it?
Well, if they're doing it in the desert, and we know it works on a tropical island, so we've got like rainforest type thing, island type scenario, harsh desert type scenario, I wouldn't imagine so. There's a earthship from Fort Collins I saw with a room for rent on Facebook. Yeah, there are some Earth ships around here, and I have visited 2 of them, and the people who own them are very gracious about people checking out why they live in them and why they choose to live there. I think that this is, it's about being relieved from bills and the pressure of that stuff. It's about being self-sustaining. What happens if, did people just see, raise your hand, that a water place was hacked and they got cybersecurity and they got the town's water through cyber to release more lye, which is like a chemical component, into the water? Totally random, totally from a distance. Yeah, very, very freaky that even what they put in the water to make sure that it stays clean is so automated that it would be vulnerable to an attack, a cyber attack as well. I never would have thought that. Was it in Florida, Illinois, Colorado? You'll find it in today's news. Go look around. Florida. Okay, yep. So anyway, though, lucky it was a small town, right? So I think another reason is like safety. You're collecting your own water. You're growing your own food. And then there's the cosmic sort of peace of mind thing. But I think a lot of concerns, and those people will tell you who are living in those things, let me reach out. Is there any interest in the class in talking to somebody who, lives in an Earth ship, and having them go through the house if they, want to talk about it or something like that, and would Zoom our class? I mean, treehouse Earth ship, and some of the treehouse places are pretty awesome. Preferably a treehouse Earth ship and solar panels to charge my Tesla. That's right. And power your blender for your organic smoothie. That's right. All right. I will at least consider that then. Good. Anything else with the Earthship piece? Anything else?
I was
right.
kind of curious, like a lot of the ones that they had in the documentary were really big and took up a lot of space. Are there any movements towards trying to like compact that a lot more to where we could use them in big cities?
Yep. And I think that, don't know about that in big cities. I do know that many of their models, they had to like make very uniform and kind of boring, and they were much more under control amount of square footage. It wasn't like 3,000 or 4,000. It was more like 1,000, 1,500. But apartment Earthships, I love the idea. I mean, his idea, what did he say at the beginning? He's like, I see a future where cities are done. People have abandoned cities because they don't take care of them. And then they've gone back in the cities to mine out materials that they can use to live. I mean, I don't want to be too dark future, but hopefully if people do start to modify cities, they start to modify it with what they have around them, which is a tremendous amount of waste. Every city, you could build a whole new suburb like that, right? Or an apartment, like, yeah, huge, where they're, I don't know. Yep. So many good thoughts. Yep. I love it. That's why I love class and college and teaching. Good thought. So many good ideas out of today. That's really my other hope for this class, is whether it's the lectures, whether it's the textbook, or whether it's our conversations, discussions about films and documentaries, that, you are consistently getting exposed to some good ideas and places and things that are going on. All right. Any questions about the exam? Anything else?
I have a quick question about the exam.
Yep, Emma.
So should we learn or memorize statistics about some of the stuff that we're learning, or is it enough just to know the concepts and the importance of it?
There might be a few statistical things out there. Like I said, if it's important, or I've stressed it, in a lecture, but not to trick people, and if you've seen the lectures and read through the books, the e-waste thing might not be, or the food waste thing doubling or 50%, right, since 1974. It's fair game. I don't put a lot of questions out there like that because I'm really not, again, trying to trick people, but those are important. There's some important things. Yeah, statistically, I think will be there. Study guide should be on announcements, and I believe it is, but let me check.
When is the just, can you repeat, when is the test? Because I'm not seeing it on the assignments tab.
Let me go down here to quizzes. Exam 1, February 12th, Friday at 8 a.m. and it's due by noon the next day.
Okay. Yeah.
So-
Okay. So it's on quizzes.
Yep, it'll open up Friday morning. You'll click in there. There'll be a more detailed description about it, the password, the amount of time you have. You'll have around an hour, maybe. Most people knock this thing out or complete the exam, I guess, because we don't want to use violent language. They do the test, complete it in about a half an hour, but I'll give at least 60 or 70 minutes.
And then the last question I had, and then this week's reading is just the next chapter in the book.
Right now, for this week, focus on the exam, and after Friday, chapter 4.
Okay.
And then, of course, looking forward, then the next discussion, right? And I saw somebody had said for the discussion, do we make new posts? Do we respond to others 3 times? You have to have your own post a week in advance of the due date. So that would have been last Thursday. And then you have to have at least 2 responses to others before the deadline and on different days. Next solution essay due next week. I'm not sure. Let me look real quick under assignments. I do not believe so, no. 2, not till March 5th. Yeah, we've got a while. We're going to get into chapter 4. I'm going to talk about, we're going to look at the food waste paper and I'll announce that big piece. And generally speaking, after the first exam, we have an influx in donations for the food bank. So that would be fantastic as well. 50 questions, 2 points each, true, false, and multiple choice is the test. It's open for over 24 hours. You'll have an hour to take it. Covers chapters 1 through 3 plus Garbage Warrior. Yeah, I don't know. I feel like we're moving at a good pace. I don't think it's been too fast and furious, but you're going to want to, study for this thing and pay attention. I want you to do well on it. That being said, I do have a policy, and I don't know if I mentioned it here, and that is, look, I want to be as equitable as possible for everyone. So if after the test, we look and there's like a 70% or 60 or 80, whatever it is, percent, like a majority of the people on a certain question didn't get it right because we phrased it wrong, the GTAs, they make the test, I give them an old test, then the 3 of us, or whatever, look, I guess 3 of us this semester look at it. If we had a test question that had 2 of the same answers or something like that, then we give back points. So we look at it, we make an assessment and say, oh, 2 of those questions were horrible. I'm not pretending to be able to write a perfect true, false, multiple choice test. That doesn't even exist. I am positive of it. So then maybe we say, 2 of them were bad. We add 4 points on and we're good to go. We'll make that clarification after the weekend though. And you'll probably be able to see your score almost immediately because of technology, something besides a Scantron machine. Imagine that in 2021. Also flying cars. Yay. Anything else? All right. If you run across something else, please reach out to me if you want to Zoom, if you want to talk about anything, if you have any questions whatsoever. Mask up because that's the right thing to do. Be safe, be good people, and be good people and do good things. Thanks, everybody. Love you all. Have a great day. Take care. I'll post this.
Thank you.
Thank you.